My name is Alem, I'm from Bosnia, and today I'll be talking about why HTML is the best programming language. Oh wait, that's actually for the wrong meetup. I'll be talking about something else, and that's revolutionizing Remix developer experience with Remix development tools. So I have 3 goals and objectives today. I want to explain 3 things. So the first thing is the who, the second one is the why, and the third one is the how. The first one is me going over how I made it and why I made it. The second one is, well, the first one is going over who I am and why I made it. The second one is how I made it and why. And the third one is how it works. So, something about me. So this is my little bird. She actually does half of the coding. Her name is Kira. And the first thing I want to say is I'm from Bosnia. And that's a small country in Europe, if you haven't heard about it. Most of the people here have, but if somebody is watching on Twitch who's from America, I'm assuming they haven't. I wouldn't either if I lived in America, to be fair. My main goal is to make your Remix Run experience enjoyable and to teach you how to use it. I also do YouTube, I write articles on Remix, I do a lot of Remix stuff, and I'm really in love with it, and I hope you'll, by the end of this speak, you'll be in love with it as well. I am an open source contributor, and I've loved open source ever since I started development. I just felt that I wasn't ready to contribute until last year. I wanted to accumulate enough knowledge so I can give back to the community, and I just wasn't sure on how to do that and with what. And last year I just decided to jump into it and create my first package called Remix Hook Form. Remix Hook Form is basically something I made for Remix specifically to use it as a wrapper around React Hook Form if anybody used it. That was my first package. I published it on NPM and then I shared it in the Remix Discord, and I really got some amazing feedback from the community. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I wanted to create more packages. I wanted to help others and make Remix better. So after that, I created Remix Forge. So Remix Forge is a VS Code extension that allows you to generate code snippets for Remix. It does a lot of stuff that you can explore with the docs, but basically it can generate authentication flows, it can generate databases, so you can, for example, initiate Prisma with whatever database you want. It just sets up everything for you. You just plug in the environment link. It allows you to generate stuff like loaders, actions with a right click, and it does a lot of things. It tells you when your Remix version is outdated, so you can just click it and update it. And after that, I even got better feedback from that. I actually got a fire emoji on Discord from Ryan Florence when I created Remix Forge. And after that, I wanted to create my magnum opus. And what I wanted to do is create development tools. So if anybody here is from a front-end background, you'll probably know that Nuxt.js has amazing development tools. And the Nuxt community is just amazing at what they do, and I feel like the Nuxt community always says, so usually people say something can be done, and I feel like that community just ignores that and just does everything. They created so many amazing things that I'm not gonna go into, but basically I was inspired by that community to create development tools for Remix. And I wanted to, so basically I had the idea, and I know what I wanted to create, and I used their development tools as a starting point as to what I want to create. So when I started working with Remix, I didn't like it at first. I thought it was a little bit confusing for me, and I didn't understand what happens when you submit information to the server. So before I go on, I would like to ask you a question. Does anybody here know what exactly Remix is? Is it a server? Is it a client library? What is it?
It's a server that renders client stuff once, and then the client can magically works until we need the server again.
Wrong. So what it is, so that's the common misconception that I thought you were gonna make, but Remix is not a server, it's a request handler. And you can think of it as a glorified middleware that you can plug in anywhere. So how it works is, it basically takes, so you create an adapter that you give to your server, and that adapter takes the incoming request, gives it to Remix. Remix then does a lot of stuff, so basically renders your app, blah, 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 and sends you the response back. And when you get the response, you use the adapter to turn that response back into whatever the framework is. So if, I should probably turn it off. So if I'll just go back a bit. So what it does is it gives you the response. Your adapter turns that response into whatever it should be. So for example, if you're using Express, it turns it into an Express response. If you're using Hono, it turns it into a Hono response and sends it back to the client. And that's what Remix actually is. It's not a server that you run, it's a request handler that you give to your server to handle your requests. Which means you can have half of your server, I don't know, as an API, do something with it, and you can have half of it render your application with Remix. And that's the cool thing about Remix. So I have 3 things that I wanted to do. First of all, I wanted to understand better how Remix works. And as you can see from me knowing it's a request handler, I've achieved that. The second thing I wanted to do is save development time, because I really like to get my tasks done quicker. And the third thing is getting the features out there. I don't want to spend 2 days working on an issue that I have no idea what's going on. I just want to ship my features to my users. And to achieve these 3 things, I have sat down, and first what I did was try to understand how Remix works. And I've failed miserably. I've created, so back then I assumed as well it's a server, and I didn't know how it works under the hood. So I couldn't figure out how to get information on the client, and I wanted to add route boundaries to show you, for example, if you have a nested route, if you have user/1/new, Remix handles that by showing you parts of the UI correlated with the URL. And I couldn't figure out how to show you where user ends, where one starts, and then again where new starts. And I've tried hooking into the internals of Remix, and I caused crashes across many applications because I hooked into the wrong things. I broke it, and then I realized that's not how it's supposed to work. And there was a lot of trial and error, and the first 2 versions of Remix of Remix development tools I was never happy with, because I felt it wasn't stable and it wasn't doing what it is supposed to do. And then after I released version 3, that was like after 4 months of me sitting at my computer, pulling my hair out, trying to figure out how to make it stable and work across everything, across ECMAScript, across CJS, which is a nightmare in of its own and probably the bane of every open source developer's existence. I figured in version 3 how it works, and I finally shipped something I was proud of. But the issue was that I relied on node-specific internals to handle the server side, which meant you can't use Remix development tools everywhere. You can use them only in Node, which was okay, but I didn't really like that either. So what I decided to do was create an adapter for Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is the hardest environment to get right, because if you run anything on their workers, it doesn't use Node, it doesn't use anything. You can't read a file from the file system, you can't do anything that Node allows you to do. And I started working on the adapter, and then the Remix team said, I'm gonna trick him, I'm gonna release read support. And that's what they did. So after that, I literally threw everything I created for Cloudflare at that point into the trash, and I decided to start over. Let me build it with Vite. And that's how I created my Vite plugin for Remix development tools. The old approach, it required you to do 2 things. Because it's a request handler, it has the server, it has the client. So what I had to do was I had to wrap the server that you already had, so the server build, with my Remix development tools build. And how it worked is basically I hooked into all the loaders and actions. I listened to all the incoming requests. I analyzed the data. I sent it to the client via a WebSocket, which is also not, which also doesn't work in Cloudflare or a lot of other serverless environments. And then on the client, I show you the information. And the other part was the client part, where I actually hook into your client side of things. I listen to navigations, I listen to hydration errors and stuff like that. So those two parts work great together if you could set them up. So how you set them up is basically you had a function that I exported, you had your custom server, and then you would have to wrap your server build with my custom function that injects all of these things, which was really, first of all, it's really hard to get the point across because everybody has a different custom server, so it's really hard to find like a silver bullet and tell everybody, hey, this is the way to do it. So that was out of the question for everybody. And the second thing, it's really hard to explain in the documentation how you have to do it, because you have to understand how Remix works in order to do it. And this is where Read saved, my life. So basically what Read allowed me to do is do all of this for you without you having to do anything. What it allowed me to do is create a plugin, and I do all the setup for you. I inject everything you need into your bundles without you having to do anything. You just plug it into the plugins for the Read config, which we'll go over a little bit later, and it works. And you get all the benefits of the development tools without me having to explain through issues, through Discords or anything like that, how to set it up. And this allowed me to move even further along, because I assumed that it will work across everything, because I decided this time I'm not going to use WebSockets that I customly built. I'm not going to build anything custom. I'm going to rely on Vite, and I'm just going to use what Vite offers me. And that's what I did. I used their parser for the code. I used their WebSockets. I used everything from Vite, and I hoped it will be a gamble that pays off, as Vite will allow me to run it everywhere without me having to basically, whenever Remix releases a new release, I have to go change everything. And thankfully, that's what happened. I will tell you how it happened in a little bit, but first I want to say that the growth that the package had it just blew me away. I've gotten over 330,000 downloads on GitHub. It has almost 500 stars. And whenever I see a screenshot on anywhere where people, so because the Remix DevTools log custom logs, and whenever somebody asks on the Discord if they can get help on what's going on, and I usually see the logs there because I know what they look like, it makes me so proud and happy of what I've made. And I'm so happy that to know that not only my parents are using this, so there's also other people who like my stuff, and that really makes me proud. And that's the intro I wanted to share with you. So I said that I'll tell you what I meant earlier a little bit later, and this is the moment. So Remix team released unstable Cloudflare support on Vite 2 days ago. I've spent yesterday driving to Vienna for 8 hours. I barely slept. And today I spent preparing this presentation, because that's how you make presentations, make them the day earlier or on the same day. And so basically I haven't touched Remix development tools in like a week or two or even more. And they released support for Cloudflare, and today I'll show you Remix development tools running on Cloudflare. One of the most demanding environments without me doing any changes. So earlier today, so a few hours ago, I set up a project that uses their Cloudflare support. So if you look at the index route here, you can see that I'll just lower this a bit so you can see it. You can see that the action here uses the KV from Cloudflare to basically delete and post data, and this uses the KV to get the data, which means that Remix Development Tools works on Cloudflare, the most demanding platform that requires you not to use Node without any issues. The client side works, the server side works, and everything is connected and working in harmony. And if I run this, I should have let it open it first. You can see that it runs. So I couldn't set up a demo that looks nice, so you're gonna have to bear with me with the bare essentials here. But if you look at the bottom right corner here, you'll see this icon, and those are the development tools. So I got the inspiration from React Query. If you ever use that package, they have the same approach here. They just show you a fancy icon, but you can move this around the screen, so it's, well, you can move it with a command, so you can set it anywhere you want. So, and if I open it, you can see that it shows us a few things. So the first thing is on the right, you have the timeline here, and basically what this timeline does is whenever you submit anything to the server, and whenever the server responds, you're going to see it in the timeline here. You're going to see what kind of method was associated with it, what route was hit, what the encryption type is, what the data is. And if I, for example, say test here, and then I save it, you're going to see new things in the timeline. So I sent this data to the server. It didn't respond from the action with anything. It just re-triggered the loader, and you get the new information. And if we open up the loader data here, we can see that the value was test, and we can see that on the UI as well. And what I wanted to do is basically create an easy way for me personally, and then for others obviously, an easy way to know what I'm sending, what I'm receiving, and what's going on. Because my biggest hurdle with Remix when I began were two things. What was I getting from the loader? What was I sending to the action? And generally what was going on, because I didn't understand when the page was transitioning, when it wasn't, and how it worked under the hood. And this timeline here is basically an homage to that. I just wanted it to explain to me how it works, so I don't have to figure out, did I send the data correctly, what type of data did I send, because this tells me what type of data it is. And it also tells me what the server responded with, because here it doesn't respond with anything, it doesn't matter, but you get the point. You can see what it responded here as well. And on the left side, when I hover over this, you can see the gray here. And I'm gonna just change this to be a little bit more of a vibrant color. So these are the settings. You can play around and do a lot of things here. But if I change this silver to be something like watermelon, and then go back here, when I hover over these, you're gonna see the route boundaries show up. So this is what I was talking about earlier. But this works and doesn't break your application. So how it works is it uses React developer tools, so not Remix, but the React ones, and then finds the outlet that Remix uses under the hood, and then swaps the child of the outlet with some custom, well, not swaps, but adds some custom classes that I use to figure out where the route boundary is, and then I show it to you. So whenever you hover over one of the routes, you can see where the route boundary is. And that's the cool thing. And then what I've done is, you can see the VS Code button here, and if I click on it, it's going to open up VS Code. So you can see it's shimmering here, and if I open it up, it's going to open up the file where this is located. And the cool thing is, if you want to be even more granular with it, let's say I don't want to open this route file that's associated with this route. I want to open where this text is. I can just Alt right click here, and it's still gonna open the line associated with the text on the screen. And I've stolen this idea from other developers, but I've just implemented it in Remix, but it's still cool nonetheless. And the other thing that's cool is that you can use, so you can see that the loaders and actions were triggered here after we started the build. So the server part of Remix DevTools basically tells you whenever your loaders and actions are triggered. And if you throw responses or add some caching into it, you're gonna see that as well. And it's a lot cooler, which I'll show you a little bit later when we do caching. But the important thing is you can basically open up anything you see on screen in VS Code by just right-clicking on elements. And then if I go to route type, so if I open up this part, you can see all the routes you have in the project. And because the Remix uses a file-like structure to separate your routes, and it's basically nested routes. So basically you can imagine it as a tree. I created a tree for you already, so you can figure out what's nested where and how it works. So for example, the root of the project is where the routes start. So everything starts from root, and the root outlet renders everything in your application. So the blue circles are the layouts that do not have a URL path, but they actually render some sort of layout. And the green ones are the dots that represent your routes. And the cool thing is, if you have error boundaries, so error boundaries allow you to granularly handle errors. So if you want to swap a part of your UI instead of the whole application when an error is thrown, you can use error boundaries. And if I click on one of the routes, it tells me that it has an error boundary, and it tells me where, if it doesn't belong to this route, it tells me to what route the error boundary belongs to. So for example, here, the wildcard here is the route. So you can see it here. So it's test ID/ID, edit new test wildcard, but the route belongs to new. So that means it's 1, 2 levels up. And that's really cool because then you can figure out where your error boundaries are. You don't have to search for them, you just go to the file. And you can also swap out wildcards with actual IDs. So for example, this is saved in local storage, so you can basically open up, let's say you're testing something for a feature, and you click here, it's going to open up that route with the IDs you provided. So for example, if you're testing a specific user with some specific, I don't know, entities like a product or something, you just paste them in and then open it up without having to actually copy paste the IDs later on. And then you can see that all the routes here turn yellow, and this basically tells you the current route. So if I zoom this out, you're going to see that it starts at the root, it uses this layout, and then goes all the way down here. But if you can see here on the errors, it's red and it's blinking. So this means that we have errors on the page. And if we open this up, we can see basically there's a checker that checks if you have invalid HTML that's going to cause hydration issues. So what's important to know is Remix works in a way that its server renders your app, sends it to the client then takes over and hydrates the app, and client-side renders it. And if there are mismatches between the server and the client, it causes hydration issues. So these can vary on the issues. So it can either be done because of some plugins. So this is an issue with the React side of things because 18.2 doesn't handle plugins. When I say plugins, I mean Chrome extensions. It doesn't handle them well, and if the Chrome extension does something to your HTML before it's hydrated, it's going to break hydration. You can also have invalid HTML. So if you already don't know, when you render a page on the client, the browser also does a lot of fixing for you because HTML is very easy to get wrong, and if you get some elements wrong, the browser itself tries to fix it for you, and this causes hydration issues. For example, if you have nested forms, it doesn't leave them as nested, it moves the inner form next to the outer form, and then that causes a hydration issue because on the server they were nested, and here they aren't, and then your whole page breaks. And whenever you get hydration issues, it usually breaks your behavior of your app in some way, or for example, the dev tools don't act as expected. But what's cool here, so because we navigated to this page, You can't see it yet, but when I refresh the page and do a full document request, it's going to be rendered on the server as well. And when I open it, you can see that you have a hydration mismatch comparison here. And this allows you to figure out what went wrong with the HTML. So the right side is rendered on the client, and the left side is rendered on the server. So if you look closely at the H here, and the A is here, you can see that the HTML moved the A outside so it works properly, and it was the same on the server, so it kind of broke. And we got hydration mismatches here, but we can detect them with the development tool just by looking at the HTML. And for example, if I had a Chrome extension that, for example, applied IDs to some scripts of mine, I would also see it in the comparison here. If I had time zone mismatches, which can also happen if you deploy your server on +1, your client is on +5, it's going to render, I don't know, 1 a.m. on your server, it's going to render 6 a.m. on your client, you're going to have hydration mismatches. This also detects that. So basically, whatever happens on the server and whatever happens on the client, this detects it, and it handles it. And what else you can do with it is you can detach it, and it opens it up in another Chrome tab or whatever tab you're using, and then you can basically send this to another screen that you use for development. So for example, let's say this is your main screen, you don't want the development tools in the way, you just send them to the right. And if you're interested, I actually wrote an article how I did this. I basically use local storage as a WebSocket here. So basically, these two tabs communicate with each other via local storage, basically. And it's basically, it allows you to sync both of them and show whenever something happens on the left, it's going to be reflected on the right. And if I close this up and bring them back where they were, that's it for the client side. And then on the server side, if you open this up, you're going to see a lot of stuff has been logged. So another thing cool thing I do here is I analyze headers that you send back to your client. And what this means is I actually show you when something is cached, where it's cached, and for how long. So for example, here if you look at this, you can see that the shared cache is, for example, 1 hour 40 minutes, 20 seconds, and this is cached on the CDN. And then you have the 60-minute private cache here. This is cached in the user's local browser. And if you, for example, refresh the page, you actually won't see the info log because the info is cached, obviously. And you also see when you set the cookies, you can see the information. For example, there's another header which I always forget the name of, but basically you use it to clear cache on the client with that header. And I again can't remember the name, but basically if you set that header and you, for example, clear cache, it's going to log, you cleared cache, you cleared the local storage, whatever you want to clear with it. And that's pretty much it. So there's another thing that it does, but I can't show it to you because I created, so basically, actually let me just try doing this, maybe it will work then, but I'm not sure where the hydration errors are. So if I go to new, this autocomplete to this. Actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just fix. So this also, when you have these errors, you can click on it and it's gonna open it up for you where the file is. So we can basically delete this form. I think that's gonna fix the hydration issue I created by hand, so I can demo it. Let's see if I refresh this. Alright, there's also page ones. This is why you shouldn't add errors manually to your application, it's gonna break. Alright, so here, I'm just gonna delete all of this, and then save it, and then if I refresh it, I still have errors. This is the P tags. I was really detailed in my error creation. and I delete this as well. At least it serves a purpose to show you how easy it is to debug. And then I refresh this for the third time. The third time is a charm, and then we have no errors here. And then if I go back to the route I wanted to go to.
Can you show the highlight feature again? Now that you're on this route? Because I think then.
Yeah, so here's the highlight feature. So basically it shows you the route boundaries for everything. And if I scroll down, it shows it for this as well. Then go there, the layout, and then the root of the application. This is a little bit harder to see in actual applications because you usually have background colors, hopefully. But yeah. So. Alright, so what I wanted to show you is, well actually I could have shown you this without the hydration errors, but for the sake of debugging, let's call it what it is. So here, if you look at the loader data, you can see that there's a JSON structure here, and basically this allows you to unwrap everything, and you can see all the information that was returned from the server. You can see arrays, you can see objects, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. The cool thing is you can copy anything here. So for example, if your QA team finds a bug, usually they can just copy what the response is, send it to you, and you can debug it. And you can also, for example, what I like to do with this whenever I work with third-party services, for example, Stripe, they send you an object with like 70,000 fields. So what I do is I just pass it along to the client, and then I see what it passed along. I mark whatever I need for myself for later, and then I just pick those properties away from the object and then send them to the client. I made sure already on the client that it works, and I'm done. I return the right data. I can see it right away here that it's returned properly, and I'm good. And that's it for the demo. I'm just gonna go back to the presentation, and then I'm gonna click present here so I can show you the thank you screen in the most complicated way possible. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with the family.
Anybody on the live stream, feel free to ask some questions, because it says if I'm monitored, you can see them on Twitch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really actionable questions here. Well, actually, you guys showed up in person. Does anybody have questions here? Go ahead.
What did you use to write the DevTools UI?
Remix.
Trick question.
Well, actually, they're written in plain React because they're on the client, but I use Remix to test everything. So basically, it's Remix inside of Remix. So, yeah. Any other questions?
How much of the whole dev tooling is like Remix specific? Because I mean, we're using Next at our company. I had a quick talk with Thomas about it, and I think it's also the biggest chunk that's missing in the whole Next ecosystem, because I think it's extremely hard to understand what's going on under the hood, especially with like data loading, server actions, and all those topics. So how much of this is like really Remix specific, and how much could be also with adapters be hooked into Next.js maybe?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, to be honest, I haven't really worked with Next in a very long time. So, ever since like the page directory and older versions like 9 or 10. Yeah. So, I couldn't really answer your questions without really digging deep into it. The client side could be maybe adapted to work with. So a lot of the features are basically just showing information, and how I do the timeline and the left side on the first tab is basically I listen to use matches hook and the use transition hook from Remix. So if you swap those out, you could basically create next dev tools. Also, you could, for example, I use Remix browser context to get the routing information if there's something. I'm guessing there is something in Next you could also swap these two out and have the route tree generated for you. So it wasn't built as something to be like ported over to Next, so there would be a lot of work you would have to do manually, but it is possible, and I think it's not that hard to do because most of the stuff is in a context and it's usually presentational, so if you get like into the meat of it and replace the core parts, you could get DevTools for Next as well. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah. What are the next big features you're looking into, or what are the next big steps you're kind of planning?
So another thing I haven't shown in the presentation, but Remix development tools allow you to add plugins. So there are 2 plugins already that I've created, and I made that something of a community effort where you can commit your own plugins. But basically you can add any tabs and do whatever you want. So for example, if you want to create users on an endpoint, you can add your custom tab that does that. And for example, let's say you have some flow that takes like 5 creation steps, you can just automate it with that. So my idea, if you heard about my latest package, Remix Client Cache, it allows you to add caching on the client for Remix with client loaders. I plan to add a plugin that allows you to see what's cached and for how long. That's the first thing I want to try to do. And the second thing is I want to see what I can do with client loaders and client actions, because that's currently the missing piece here, because this listens to loaders and actions but doesn't listen to client loaders and client actions. But those are on the client, so it's a whole different paradigm, and I have to figure out what makes sense to do. Because I could log it to the console, but is that really useful for you? I don't know. So that's something I was actually looking for feedback on Twitter or X the other day to figure out what people would like to see from client loaders, so I can implement it. And that's the answer. Anything else?
Do you recommend using it in production? Are you supposed to keep it on your server all the time?
No, this is not built for production. Well, actually, you might be able to use it for production. I would have to enable you to do it, because the Vite plugin checks if it's running in development. If it's not, it removes it completely. But if I remove that check, you could, the guardrail is there for a reason, but I could allow you to configure that. But you could run this, because there's a setting, if I go back to the demo here, if I go to the settings tab, there's show development tools only when a URL flag is set. So if you use a combination of this, and if I forgot that it's automatically, I have to add a flag now to show them.
What is the flag?
RDT. So if I do, there it is, and then you can set the flag you want to use. So for example, it can be Vienna, so I'm not gonna change it because I'll have to change it in the URL again, but you get the point. And then you could, for example, go to a production environment, run this, and then set the flag and see what's going on. But that's something I could do. I haven't gotten many requests to do it, so I never actually looked into it, but that's not really something that's hard to do, especially with Vite. So, I completely forgot to mention the most important thing. So to get development tools running with Vite, all you have to do is add them to the plugins array and import them from the package. And that's it. Also, there's configuration stuff you can do. So for example, you can say the plugins directory is located, for example, here. And there's also an option to turn off server logs. So for example, if you don't want to see when your loaders are triggered, you can turn that off. It's granular, so you can turn whatever you want off. And yeah, so this is the best part about Vite. It's 2 lines of code. And you have everything that you see in here for free.
I mean, coming back to your question, I think that would actually also in our case. So as I've shown you in the code pipeline, we have several stages, but we set node env to production for these stages, right? Because we wanted to test it. So, but still, we want to have these Remix development tools for the beta and gamma environment, where a QA tester could
Mhm.
use it. So for
Yeah,
that,
so
it
what
would
I
make
could do
sense.
is basically add like a config run, and then you do process environment, node environment equal to,
Yeah,
for
or
example.
if you have context here of your stage, you can actually just, put it there if it's on stage or not.
Also, I mean, this would even
Like
be
in the array,
possible.
plugins array there.
Yeah, so the Remix DevTools here return a plugin array, so you could basically find the one that removes it from development and then remove that check at the moment, but I could also easily add that in so to be configurable.
But currently you have this check node.env is development within the Remix DevTools.
Yes, it basically it checks if the build environment flag is production.
Okay.
If it is, it removes them. If it's not, it uses them.
So just last follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you were talking about getting it to work with Cloudflare before. So is that just was the primary goal of that? If you're developing locally with the Cloudflare stack, like using Wrangler or something? And
Yeah, so this whole demo was running on Wrangler.
Okay.
So this is their Cloudflare adapter for Remix.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, you can even see it here. It's preset to Cloudflare, and this can run basically anywhere. I was like waiting to say it can run anywhere until I saw that it can run on Cloudflare, and now I'm confident it can run anywhere.
So Cloudflare, Dino, and
Cloudflare, Dino, Alicia, Ono,
actually
Express.
is Cloudflare Winter.js thingy?
No, Cloud is using the worker, the Cloudflare worker.
Yeah, I think this specific example uses Cloudflare pages,
It's working.
but I think it can work on. I can't say that for certain because that's more of a Remix question on what they can run Cloudflare on, but I'm pretty sure you can run it on anything Cloudflare related.
You showed us some of the nice features that you have, with the, first of all, the tree, that you show all the entire path and all that, and also with the right-click thing, and also the requests that's coming in. Can you share some of the internals, how you do that and where you do it, and
Sure.
for example, yeah, like
The fact that I'm basically boxing at my PC.
I do it every time I stream.
Even better.
So, as you can see, I have a lot of test apps here. So what do you want to see actually?
for example, the nested path
Uh-huh.
thing. How does it work?
So,
Or how to use?
I'll just go to the.
How do you get information for the path, for example?
Let me just find the utilities here. I think it's inside of routing here. Yeah, it is. So, let me just look at the code for a bit. I haven't looked at this in a while. So this is used inside of the routes tab. So that's basically the tab that you saw. And the routes here are generated via create extended routes. And how it works is, so this is what I was talking about earlier. So you have the window.remix manifest here, and the remix manifest has all the routes available in your project. And then I get the routes, obviously. And then what I do is I map them, I create the remix path to the URL, and then I find the parent error boundary here, and then I filter leaf routes. I don't remember why I filtered them, to be honest, but I do. And then this creates the tree that I want. And then from this tree, what I do is I basically render the graph. I use, so if I go to the routes tab,
Some library for that.
yeah, it's.
And this remix manifest, is this like available on every remix?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
It's basically how Remix. It's Remix internal that they use to figure out stuff like what to render, where to fetch, blah blah blah. It has a lot of more properties in it. I just use the routes here. what else would you like to see?
Yeah, how about the VS Code thing, like the right click and then?
Yeah, so it's two parts. So if I go to hooks here, I think it's this one. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I use this traverse component tree here, and it's basically a recursive function that goes through the tree, and then there's a lot of helpers I've added along the way, and this is probably better to be renamed than use bordered routes, but basically how it works is...
So it's some AST work, basically, right?
Yeah, basically, it goes through every node, and what it does, it sets the attribute of data RDT source here to the file name and line. And this is generated, so before it was generated by Remix, but now it's generated by Vite. So the Vite one is like super precise. It's going to give you the exact line in your code, but the Remix one was off by like 20, 30 lines, so I just did minus 30, so to get you almost there. And basically, it goes recursively as this to everything, and then when you click on it, there's an event listener that doesn't matter, it just sends the request to the server.
So when you hover over it, you set some attribute?
No, this is set when you render the page, so it's set on every HTML element.
Okay.
I could change it to do that as well. I mean, nobody complained of their HTML looking dirty yet, so I'm just doing it this way because it's easier for me. And then later on, I just get this property and then use it to send it to.
So you cannot see it when you inspect the. Do you see this attribute?
Yeah, you'll see it if you inspect your
HTML?
with the Chrome DevTools.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
you can
every
see it.
attribute gets this.
Yes, like I said, nobody has complained yet. If they do, I'll change it. But you can change it also to get it when you click on it as well.
Okay.
And I set it here, and then later on there is an event listener that basically listens to whenever you click on element. So it's added to Alt plus right click, so it's not like triggered when the user clicks something and stuff like that. And whenever you do that, what this is gonna do is it's gonna use the WebSocket from Vite, send it to the server side part, and then the server side is basically going to execute code, name of the file, and because you have VS Code installed, I hope you also have the command line. If you don't, it's not gonna work, but if you have the command line, it's going to basically code the file name, file line, and open it in VS Code.
Does that mean we can customize it to open it in WebStorm?
Yes, but I have no idea how. People ask me to port, so the Remix Forge extension, they asked me to port it into WebStorm, and then I looked at it and figured out it's Java, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do it. Feel free to do it, I'll give you my blessing, but I'm not gonna do it.
I love WebStorm, but I just, yeah, I'm pretty much using VS Code just because I can debug and remix, but when it comes to like Git and all that, WebStorm, you just can't beat the UI for it.
Yeah, I mean, WebStorm is awesome, but yeah, I don't plan developing for it anytime. I personally hate Java, so I really don't want to like code that's an extension to Java. Any other questions?
Well, WebStorm is basically half its developers were in Russia, so like when that whole mass invasion happened, they lost half their developers pretty much, I think.
Well, that sucks. Not sure how it's relevant though, but oh, and ignore the build errors. It's just a CJS thing. I'm going to deprecate CJS from Games Development Tools when Vite is stabilized because it's a nightmare and I can't use Vite properly with it. It still works with CJS, but it's a nightmare. Alright, I guess there's no more questions. Thank you again, everybody, and that's it. Alright, well,
Thanks very much to Thomas and the AWS for providing this lovely venue and the pizza and the beer and the drinks, which I didn't even ask for, and I was like, no, I'll bring some energy drinks, and as long as there's coffee, people will be awake. But thanks for coming on a Friday of all days. So this is the best day for you to come. So we couldn't miss this opportunity. So I guess we'll try and do another one in at least in a month.